If you could take a picture of every single moment of my existence, if you could put those pictures in order, if you could see them all at once, do you think you'd know me better?
Well, Selected Recordings of Us is a piece of new writing about queer relationships and queer memory. Because so much of queer history has been erased, there isn't a lot out there that can tell us how queer people lived in the past and the way that they made sense of their own lives and the way that they wanted to tell their own stories. And so we were kind of exploring and toying around with the idea of writing a play about what it means to tell a story as queer people. What does it mean to be queer? Is it about identity? Is it about what we do? Is it about the kind of stories that we tell? Is it about the way that these stories look like?
These two characters who are at the breaking point of their relationship, and they're trying to rebuild what the story of their relationship is.
We're not commenting on it, we're just looking at different ways of reenacting. And so in the first half of the scene is we're reenacting the first time that we met by trying to talk about it.
I wrote the play with Gab during the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic, when we were actually a country apart. We've had this enforced period of kind of isolation and emotional isolation, and this play is all about intimacy and also how we think about our connections to other people, what we owe them, and what kind of stories we tell to keep ourselves alive.
Nothing remembers as well as a photograph does.
No, photographs don't remember, they document.
What's the difference?
It's so rare that you get to see a relationship on stage between two female identifying people and also two female identifying people who are people of colour. And I love the fact that it's a show that doesn't explicitly kind of go, oh, well, this is a play about queer love and you have to state everything you are. It's just an exploration of a relationship between two people.
These past 2 years, what I've been missing the most is intimacy with people. And I think at the core of this show, it's an exploration of intimacy and connecting. This audition was actually one of the first ones that I did during COVID. And I remember kind of reading the description of what the theatre company was, like allowing opportunities for people who don't get to tell these stories. I often feel like I'm elbowing and kicking to get in to play the roles that I want to play, and here was a company that was just like, we want you, like you're the kind of people that we want, and I was like, well, here I am then.
Scene 1 is very much a mix of experiment and reenactment. Scene 2...
Undone Theatre is a company that focuses on experimental forms of storytelling and just the intersection of that with marginalised stories and often queer stories. And so our focus is mostly on non-linear narratives or narratives that challenge just dominant ways of telling stories. And I think that Select Recordings of Us is a perfect example of that because it is a play about telling stories, and that's where our interest lies as a company. Those lines that are in italics, those are the ones that are more like traditionally reenactment. Officially, the company was created during COVID. We are really interested in exploring all of those boundaries of what does theatre look like in 2021.
The pandemic has shifted the theatre industry, and I think it's important for us as a company to move with that shift. A lot of our work is about undoing these traditional narratives, kind of tearing apart the stories and recreating them and restructuring them and playing with form.
You're also helping the audience understand what's going on.
Yeah.
You're literally reading out the stage you're actually. That kind of experimentation really comes from the perspective of looking at the way that we are producing these stories and who are the people who are telling those stories and what do their identities and their backgrounds do to these stories, how do they inform them.
Well, you took a picture of us the night we met. Yeah.
We've missed having relationships between other people. We've missed seeing relationships between other people. It's one of those plays that's, and the way it jumps as well between the different parts of people's relationships as well. I think there's so much that people can relate to in these relationships, whether or not you're in a queer relationship or, you know, a heterosexual relationship or whatever. I'm just really excited to kind of share it with people.
Either one or two, depending on which camera you're looking for.
There's a lot of technical elements of the show that we're experimenting with, and a lot of it wasn't, we weren't sure exactly how it was going to work until we got into the space. And so actually being able to rehearse here and play around with projections and live streams and different sounds and all the different elements of the show, where it is a very experimental piece, we've had a lot of time to be able to experiment with it and work out what works and what doesn't.
One day, when you're bedbound, you'll want to see a photo that tells you could once stand up, dance for 2 hours and blitz the muscles in your shins and still walk half an hour home.
It's been really exciting to just feel the energy change every night with the audience interaction, and just really to be able to have that feedback from audiences and just being able to have those discussions. We've just had our Q&A, which was lovely, and it just gave us a chance to kind of like discuss the themes of the show in more detail, and just having that kind of like two-sided discussions of, this is what we hope that the show did. I think it's been really interesting hearing other people talk about it, because so much of the show is just non-linear and different episodes from these people's lives, and we're not trying to tell a story that has a beginning and an end in a clear way. So there's always almost like a concern of like, are people gonna be able to relate to this? And so it was really nice to actually see people being moved. The audience, when we wrote the play, we wrote the audience in as a third character, and so it just, to me, it's fundamental that they come up with their own interpretations of it, and I hope that they do differ from our own way of seeing it.
Hi. Hello. I just haven't heard from you in a while, and I thought, I miss you. Sorry, I know that, well, I mean it in a way like, I miss seeing your face.
I just hope that it encourages everyone who comes to see it to reflect more on how we commemorate one another in our lives. The obsession with things like Instagram, it's very ephemeral, and this play is about how we tell stories that last.
Do you remember when we used to come up with stories? We had so much to tell each other, we had to make it up. I remember how many times I met you for the first time.
It reminded me of things I've felt before. It made me reflect on my own experiences, kind of warned me about things I might feel in the future, and just kind of like a little moment of solidarity about like the human experiences we all share, and like how we might have very different lives, but we experience many of the same feelings.
It sort of provoked me to think a lot about my own relationships in a rather terrifying way, but also whether something's real if it's not viewed by someone else, or if it's not written down or recorded.
The feedback has been very encouraging. I think that people's reactions, to an extent, were more enthusiastic than I thought that they would be, which is great, obviously. And I think we've had a lot of people who may not be like regular theatre goers, or people that engage a lot with fringe theatre, just really coming up to us after the show and just saying, I just really, really enjoyed that, or that really resonated with me, and it just made me think about my own relationships in a different way. And so hopefully it just means that we just keep going this way and just playing around with experimenting with different forms of storytelling and just doing something new every time.
There's just recordings of us. I'll have another one, selected recordings. I'm not leaving in another time, another. Okay, another. Are you still there? Are you still there?